Thanks for joining us on the NRT Now podcast, part of the largest Christian music site online, newreleasetoday.com. Sit back and relax as we chat with your favorite artists, introduce you to new artists, and more. Now here's your host, Jake.
Well, y'all, it is time for another Next Big Thing episode, and for this week, I have someone who I hadn't heard of until our friend Grace on our Instagram page had introduced me to her, and strangely enough, her name is Grace as well, so we have Grace Graber with us here today, so thanks for taking the time to hang out with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So you decided that you wanted to start off the new year with new music, and quite literally, January 1, 2021, a new EP came out. Mm-hmm. How crazy to start the year off with that, with everything else going on New Year's. Yeah. Now here's a new album.
Yeah, very bold. And my debut EP at that. Yeah, I figured 2020 was a hard year. I've been making music throughout 2020 and 2021. The first day, it just felt right to basically introduce myself to the world.
Tell us a little bit about Grace Graber. I understand that you're a pastor's kid and you're from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. I'm an independent artist here in Portland, Oregon. I write music because a song saved my life. I actually grew up in Northern California. So I was a pastor's kid in Northern California, and I was bullied for my faith. So when I went to middle school, I was verbally and physically attacked. It got so bad that I got taken out of that school district, put into another one. They found out that it all spread online. So it was unsafe for me to go anywhere. I immediately was homeschooled. And because of that, I had untreated PTSD and major depression because of it, and became suicidal right before I was going to take my own life. A Hawk Nelson song actually saved my life. So that is why I make music, because the kindness and the words of the bands back in the 2000s. So the Christian bands back in the 2000s.
Wow. Well, it's crazy for me to think, because when I was growing up and going through middle school, online wasn't even a thing. Like, there was weird noises with online, you know. I don't think I got my first broadband until college, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, it's just crazy for me to think about something spreading that early on and that formative, even in middle school. Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about that process of kind of coming out of that. Obviously, you were homeschooled, like you said. Talk a little bit about transitioning and moving past that and healing from that.
Wow. Ooh, yeah.
You opened that can of worms. So.
It was good. I just haven't been asked that yet. Getting through it. So you have the physical attack, and then you've got the verbal. So the physical was, I then was afraid everyone was going to follow me home and jump me like it had happened before. And so I was afraid to leave the house. And then verbally, they were spreading it online through MySpace, and I didn't have a MySpace. We found out about it through a church person in our church. Their teenager saw that it was spreading online. I got taken out of that school district, put into another one, and I went to the school, and they were like, "Hey, aren't you that girl Grace that we heard about online?" And I was like, what? I then became like paranoid that they were going to treat me like the past school district. So it turned into this healing process of who's safe and who's not, and getting bold enough to leave the house. And I'd only ever leave the house to go to concerts. Music was such a big part of my life, especially after that song saved my life. And so I'd go to Christian concerts and meet these bands, and they were so nice to me. And I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that the people who knew me were so cruel, but the bands that I met who didn't know me were so nice. And I later found out it's because they were making music because they wanted to share the love of Jesus. And also through their actions and their words, they demonstrated that. And to me, that's what I wanted to be. And so the healing process really came from the kindness of those Christian artists. They just met me at the meet and greets. And just by giving me a safe example of someone I don't know, I was able to heal from the PTSD and then later get comfortable going out around town where I grew up. And then I started leading worship at church, becoming a little more public. And then I started opening for bands. And so music really gave me an outlet to see there are safe people and I can be myself and be accepted through music.
Wow, that's incredible. And you're talking about
Thank you.
MySpace. I don't know if everybody here that listens to this remembers MySpace. Oh, my Lanta. I think I'm having a small seizure just because of some of the sparkly backgrounds, remembering some of them. Holy cow. But,
Yeah. I actually wasn't allowed to have those until I was much older. I had no preference of like what was happening. And
as we're getting set up here, you're talking about us being in kind of an influencer world. You were saying that I think one of your songs was talking about that, or was I zoning out in my coffee?
No, not one of the songs don't talk about that. I think what we were talking about is having that good example in your life. Kind of what we were just talking about is I had that example from those Christian bands that they were so kind, and I was able to take that and really get a real feeling, as well as really relate to the lyrics. I think the realness of Hawk Nelson's lyrics, it was Take Me by Hawk Nelson, that impacted me so much. And the fact that he's like, can you hear me? Is anyone around me feel the way that I do now? The fact that he was just honest with his lyrics straight up really kind of pulled my attention and told me that, gave me a real example of what it meant to like songwrite from the heart. And so kind of like that, it's like, it's good to have those experiences with artists, because sometimes we just see them on Instagram or Facebook or wherever we're following them, and they have everything set up. They've got their whole marketing campaign set up, and they look great in their photo shoots. And when they're real people and they're writing about real things. And that's what impacted me. And I guess like this could lead into this song is I Miss the Old Days. It's the 4th song on the EP. And I Miss the Old Days is written for the bands who impacted me and showed me that real emotion and gave me those dreams to one day get to do what they got to do and impact people like they impacted me.
So I must have been lost in my coffee.
You're
People
good.
listening to this are going to be like, man, does he even pay attention to her? It's like, yes, we did, but...
It's okay.
Just want to talk a little bit about just that concept of living in an Instagram world, because that's something that I have no concept of, because I came to the social media game later in my life, well into adulthood. And just a lot of what you're saying there is, I think a lot of what we're seeing now is we're seeing everything through the lens of social media, through Twitter, through Facebook, through Instagram. So talk a little bit about working through that, as you're growing up, and just kind of divorcing ourselves and having more of a Christian perspective, more Christ-like perspective on that.
Well, it's important to understand that that's all controlled. Like everything you see on social media is a controlled point of view. It's meant to give you this kind of perspective of this person. I mean, Instagram wasn't even a thing when I was a teenager. It wasn't a thing until like later into my high school years. So I'm very happy for that. But I'm sure what it can do for younger people is say, oh, this is who this person is. And we can't interpret that as who the person is. We've got to understand that that is like what they're trying to portray, what they're trying to kind of brand their music as. It's a completely controlled situation of this is who that person is. And I think it's important to then find the depth through listening to podcasts, reading blog posts, reading about their story, who they are. And I'm sure they do Q&As. So asking them questions about their life and getting to know them there. And sometimes there is that boundary, like they don't want that, which is totally okay. It's okay to set boundaries. So I think like what's important to understand is that like, that is that character that's being put out. That is who that person is portrayed online, and they are a real person and they are dealing with things you're dealing with. So really dig in and listen to their music, see what they're communicating, and maybe relate that to yourself. Maybe you can find some connection into that.
One of the things that I see for all of us too is like we do the same thing on social media. It's also kind of an anonymous thing. So, we can say pretty much whatever we want on social media. When you're talking about some of the bullying on MySpace, which still blows me away. But yeah, I mean, you can say pretty much whatever, and there's no immediate consequences there. And
Yep.
it was Nate Parrish. I don't remember how many episodes ago that was.
Yes. I love Nate.
Super great guy. But
Yeah.
I love the way he put it. It's like sometimes when you say something, like you just don't get punched in the face on social media. Like if you said that to someone in person, like you get punched in the face, and now you don't. Just that kind of fake veneer of social media, just
Mm-hmm.
it blows me away what it's doing to us in this current generation. And now that we've all been separated from each other.
Yeah. And it's giving a perspective to younger girls. I never want them to have that perspective that they can't be just like me, because they can. Like all of those photos online are just like posed photos by a photographer, and like anyone can do that. Yeah, I think it's really hard because social media can be used for good, but it can also be used for bad. So it really depends on how much value you're putting on social media as well, how much that you're letting that speak to you versus who God says you are.
And as a dad of a little girl that's turning 10, oh my gosh, and then she's starting to get into that phase, that scares the pee out of me. That's
I bet,
the world that she's coming into. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be like down the road when the babies are going to grow up, but just in this spot that we're in right now, and just with how crazy everything is in our country, and just the influence that social media has on us right now, it scares me, because what is she going to see? What is she going to impact? How much is that going to speak into her life, that she has to live up to that as opposed to who Christ is? And for me, just the burden of what that is for me as a dad, it feels heavy for me that I've got to instruct her in the way that Christ is, where her value is, and that's really where she needs to find that. I don't know, it seems like it's going to be a really tough job the older she gets.
Yeah. And you know what, as an artist, like, even though I'm just an independent artist and I don't have a huge fan base just yet, it's still a responsibility I have to uphold. I have to understand those girls are watching me. I have to understand that I need to be vulnerable in order for them to be able to connect. Like, that is a responsibility I have now that I am releasing music, is I'm dedicated to being vulnerable, reminding those girls that they're valuable and that they're validated in whatever kind of experience they do go through. And so I think it's very important that us as artists see that we have an opportunity now to minister to people through this platform. It's very controlled, and we can control what we post. And so if that means encouragement, let's post encouragement. If that means pointing them back to Jesus, let's point them back to Jesus. We have that responsibility. And if I was impacted by Hawk Nelson back when there was no social media and I watched their video blogs, oh my goodness, oh my gosh, it was such a throwback. All their video blogs, and I saw the people they were, because they were goofy and fun and vulnerable. Even with the resources they had, now we have even more resources. So let's use that. And I can't imagine the impact we can create just with more resource like that.
And that is one of the things that I really appreciate about bands like For King and Country as well. I mean, it's every show that I've seen of theirs, which my daughter is a huge For King and Country fan, so we've seen quite a few of them. But every single show, they talk about Priceless, and they give away one of their pendants. And it's a nice help for me as a dad of a little girl that my daughter's also hearing those messages and soaking those in. Joel from For King and Country had given my daughter one of those as well. Well, it was a video interview we did a while ago, and so he gave one to her as well. And those are the messages that are pouring into her. A lot of these artists that she's been able to come in contact with because of this podcast here. It's amazing for me as a dad. Like, the burden's heavy because I know what I've got to do, but at the same time, it's also nice to have that help, that these are the messages that she's hearing as well.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because every day when I'm not working, I do aesthetics, and so I have to use my hands throughout the day, and I can't wear jewelry. But every day I'm doing like artist stuff. I wear a gold bracelet. You'll see it in all my photos on social media, and it is the bracelet from For King and Country's merch that says Priceless on it. I wear it every day. Yeah, that's so cool. That
is so cool. So a little bit more about Grace. You were saying that you just celebrated an anniversary weekend.
Yeah. 5th year anniversary. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Doesn't that go quick?
It feels like it, but I feel like, oh man, there's been so much that has happened between then that I don't know. It feels like very long. Like, it feels very long, but really quick, because like now I am who I am today, and it's like, 5 years, but Man, I feel like a completely different person than I do 5 years ago.
So hopefully your husband doesn't listen to this and is like, oh, that was a long 5 years to get here.
No. What's crazy is, so kind of a follow-up to the Hawk Nelson saving my life story is I got a chance to meet Hawk Nelson in 2011 and share a little bit about that they saved my life, that I was leading worship. I got to open for them. I got to open for bands, not for them. But I told him that my biggest dream was to sing with him one day. And he said, well, let's make that dream come true. And actually brought me on stage the next day with them in 2011 in Ontario, California. Ever since then, I've had like the perspective of if God can do that, God can do anything. And it then turned into like, okay, who am I as an artist? If God can make my wildest dream happen, then what else are you going to do with me? And I went to college for music, and that's where I met my husband. He is not musically inclined at all. Yeah, he's not creative. He doesn't like being in front of the camera. We posted some anniversary photos, and I'm like, this is very rare. Everyone get your TJ in because, but he's been really the biggest rock for me. So when we moved to Portland, because we moved from Southern California where we were going to college to Portland, we got in a car accident. It was like our 1.5 year of marriage. And I sprained my neck. I had insane whiplash. I was actually unable to hold a guitar for a little bit because I was so injured. And I found healing through massage and facials and not facials, but massages. I work for a massage and facial spa, so those two words just go together. But massage, acupuncture, alternative medicine, basically. And I started working at the front desk at the spa I work for now. He was actually the person that he said, I've been praying about it. This is when we were all done with all the car accident legal stuff. He goes, I've been praying about it, and I think we should use the car accident money to pay for beauty school so you can pursue that dream. Because I'd been wanting to be an esthetician for a long time. I do facials and stuff. After working in the industry of doing that, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, he mentioned that. And then when I started beauty school, God told me, I'm establishing this career so that you can make music. And I was like, oh, okay, God, what do facials have to do with music? And then when I got hired out of beauty school, graduated, got hired straight out, the company put out a nationwide songwriting contest, sent me to Nashville, Tennessee. And
Wow.
while I was in Nashville, I met my producer, Grant, who was someone that I had followed since I was very young, like 13, 14. I followed him, watched him make his demos, put them out on MySpace. And then he worked with bands like Skillet, Remedy Drive, and then toured with some major names. But I wanted to meet him really bad when I was in town, because I had watched him start from the very beginning. And I asked him if I could have coffee with him over Instagram. And he was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. We sat down, had coffee, had no idea that he was a producer. And he actually reached out to me after, because he checked out, oh, who is this girl? He checked my SoundCloud out. And Darkness was on my SoundCloud, the demo of that. And he was like, I want to be on your team. I want to help you pursue this. Anything I can do, let's work together. And that is where this EP has come from. But none of that would have happened if my husband hadn't suggested, hey, you should go to beauty school. You should pursue your dreams. And throughout this whole thing, I mean, my husband has been helping me save for the project. He's been supporting me. He flew to Nashville to go record with me. Oh my gosh, he has done so much to help save for the project. And he's done nothing but support me. And so to think that, like, right when we started, we were in so much pain and we were in such a hard place. And then today I'm doing a dream, and that's all because I've had such a supportive husband. And so it's like, I feel so different 5 years ago, but he has stayed the same. He has stayed constant, and he has, oh my gosh, he has blessed me more than words. So I'm very grateful for my husband.
That is so incredible. So I like the save. Like, it went from, oh, it was a long 5 years to my husband's incredible. So great save. I got to applaud you for that.
Yes.
Oh, dear. I will say, I'm in the same boat with you. Like, my wife, she can play Spotify. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But musically, other than that, I feel you. I feel you there.
Yeah, I think it's like when you get married, you're doing life with another person. We've had a great marriage throughout this 5 years, but it's been a journey together. And so, like, to think like 5 years ago, we were literally like injured, broke, and I was unable to play music, and we were just trying to live day by day. And then to think we're here. But I think it's more like this anniversary has been very impactful because we're able to see all that God has done and be grateful for all God has done in our lives, because we've been great. Like, I am very blessed to have a great marriage. So
let's talk about the music. 4-song EP just came out, which I love. It took me till yesterday to listen to it just because I'm slow sometimes.
You're good.
Really well done. So I definitely love the EP that came out. Talk a little bit about that, and let's save the Take Me Back song until the end, because I really want to reminisce on that one.
Yeah. Oh man. Grant Wool is my producer, and he reached out to me on Instagram after we'd met, after he'd listened to my SoundCloud, and Darkness was kind of the kicker. So I had a demo of Darkness. It's actually on Spotify. You can listen to it. It's Darkness Acoustic. Darkness was kind of what started it all. He approached me and he's like, this could go either way. What kind of music do you want to make? And I was like, oh, I want to go into the Christian field just because that impacted me so much. And he's has a lot of experience in it. And so it became like him really helping me discover who I am as an artist, what my sound was. We started to write a couple different songs. I Miss the Old Days, which is the one we'll revisit. That one was the other one I wrote on my own, but the other two, me and Grant wrote together, Real and Heart for Me. And Real was really cool because we got into the studio. I flew to Nashville for a week. Grant has a studio down there. And we wrote Real within that week. And he just had kind of like a basic idea, and he was like, oh, I have this idea for the song. Your love is real. And I was like, I love that. That is such a like catchy little phrase. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we built off of it. And Real was like, I really wanted to portray that vulnerability of like being scared when you talk to God, when you approach God, what are the feelings you have? But it's not like you're questioning God, but it's like you're going through life and you're having these human emotions while going, you know what, but your love is real. Like, would you come and find me? You know where I'm hiding. It's like a game of hide and seek. That was the goal with that song. And so it's like God's finding us out while we're discovering God. While all of this is happening, it's just like there's this underlying feeling of, God, your love is real above all else. And then that also kind of went into Heart for Me. And Heart for Me, I had that idea for, oh my goodness. I had the melody idea, no words yet, for Heart for Me, just for the main chorus line. I brought that to Grant and he was like, that is actually really good. He's like, I've had it stuck in my head, so let's work on it. And Heart for Me actually turned into such a personal prayer, a representation of all the years of me dealing with the PTSD and major depression, all of the years that I was sick and tired living like I'm fine. I need you tonight. Heart for Me is a prayer in itself, a representation of all the years it took for me to discover that God's heart was for me, because I think that's so hard to understand and grasp around, is that the fact that God is for us and that his heart for us is so specific to us. So it turned into like, okay, how can we be vulnerable and talk about God while more talking about our experience and our emotions with this underlying, okay, God, this is about God. You know, like with Hawk Nelson, like that was basically their songs too. They would talk about God without like actually like mentioning his name, and there being more of a vulnerable connection there. That was a goal. And Grant had grown up listening to all of those bands too. So we nerd out and we talk about all those old Christian bands, which leads into Old Days. And Old Days, I did not expect it to be an EDM song. I actually got into the studio and we started writing, and I was like, look, I'm really nervous about all of this. A very intimidating experience to go from not working with any professionals to working with a professional. So he goes, do you want to hear Darkness? And he shows me the beat that he had made for it. And it just like took all of my insecurity away. And then he showed me Old Days. He showed me kind of like that bass line at the beginning, and then it goes into the drop. And I was like, what on earth? He transformed the songs. I wrote them. He helped write Heart for Me and Real, but he really did a good job at taking my sound and making it sound good. I don't explain it. That was really Grant, honestly. He did such a good job with this project and trying to portray me for me and my sound and helping me kind of kick that off, launching me basically.
Now let's get to the best part.
Yeah.
As we're getting set up, we had such a good time reminiscing. So I want to take that in here, like the early 2000s Christian music scene. Like, oh my gosh, that was hugely formative for us. You know, like the bands like obviously Hawk Nelson. That's one that my wife and I loved, and we bought every single album as soon as it came out.
Yeah.
Jeremy Camp was one at the same time. For me personally, it was TFK and FM Static. I was just in love with the FM Static project it was Steve and Trevor from TFK.
Yes. Yeah, Run Kid Run was a big one for me. I loved Run Kid Run. Abandoned Kansas was another go-to band. Their songs are so classic, and his vocals, I love his vocals. His vocals were my favorite. And the Family Force 5 was another huge one, and it had a lot of impact on kind of like the sound that I wanted to go to, a little more electronic. And Soul Glue Activator, the fact that he was so just like goofy and like he had like the coolest style. He got up there with like Hulk hands, like spray painted Hulk hands. That to me, that's like, if I could do anything, I get on stage with spray painted Hulk hands. I want to get down to the music, but yeah, those old bands, man, they really did it for me. Yeah.
Cutlass was another one in there for me. One of the bands that I wish had a longer run of it was a band called Falling Up.
Yes. Their album, I don't know what it's called, but their album with the astronaut on it. And it was like completely a themed album. It was so good.
Yeah, I remember like Crashings and what was their sophomore album? I don't remember. But, you know, seeing them in concert with Cutlass was an amazing event there. We can't talk about early 2000s without Reliant K.
Oh my gosh.
And just the amazingness of Reliant K. Sadie Hawkins' dance is still always one that I turn up every time it comes on. Two lefts don't make a right. Yeah. Oh man, Mood Rings. My personal favorite was In Love with the 80s. And I'm only gonna pierce my last ear. Yeah. Oh, that was one of my favorites. And that was what kind of helped, like, me and Grant really bonded over Reliant K because we grew up listening to Reliant K and knew all of their songs. And so that was the coolest part, was like, I got a producer that totally understood my language. My husband he didn't grow up with those bands. So I talk about like Hawk Nelson or like, hey, and so to have like someone I was making music with who understood what I was talking about was so awesome. That was, I don't necessarily want to say the heyday because there's so much good music out now and there's been so much good music over the years. But that just really takes me back to a lot of the stuff my wife and I, in our first part of our marriage, listened to all the time, you know, something that's shared and, you know, just even back down, you know, dipping into a little bit of high school and stuff. And just so much fun to sit and think about these bands that were just, it was a lot of fun. I just even one, Britt Nicole was one that we both loved.
Huge impact on me. Yeah, huge impact.
I mean, just an incredible artist, which is funny because we actually knew her as Brittany Waddell. We actually have one or two of her EPs before she bust out into Britt Nicole.
Oh my gosh.
And we're talking about the Hawk Nelson's pre-labeled music.
Saturday Night Action, Saturday Rock Action. Oh my gosh. Somebody please message me. I'll probably Google it and be like, that's what it was called. But yeah, they had Sheridan on there. Anytime Jason does a live stream, I always am like, Sheridan! Like that one was a classic. Yeah. We're making so much good music now, but there was so much good music back then. And that's why I wanted to write a song called I Miss the Old Days to pay tribute to all of those memories and all of those bands that worked so hard. It's important, not that they're like elders because they're not old, but it's important for us to remember is a very holy thing. We read the Bible, we remember what God did, right? And so it's important for us to remember where music came from, where Christian music came from, right? And then pay respect and tell them like, look, like the next generation's coming and you impacted. I thought it was so important to start my debut EP with being able to say thank you and that I'm ready to pursue it for myself.
Each era, I don't know if even era is the right word, but you know, each stage has the foundation that they were built on. I mean, DC Talk is one of the foundational bands. Even before then, like I said, I'm not old enough to really know some of the foundations. Like I think Larry Norman is one that influenced them quite a bit. You know, so you have each one of these generations, quote unquote, of music, which is, I think, a quicker generational turnaround than, what we perceive as, generations in society, or however we want to say that. But it's just so cool to sit and reminisce and remember that history, like you're talking about. Like, this is what it was for this kind of next generation. We had the Reliant K's, some of the Christian hip hop that's coming out was based on a certain foundation, and it just brings out a good, playful, just happy emotion just talking about all these bands that I used to listen to, and that I need to update a Spotify playlist to get some of this back in.
I actually have a playlist called The Old Days. I did it as a spinoff, and I actually added all of my favorite bands from the old days. It's funny to call it the old days because it really wasn't that long ago, but
it really wasn't. And that's why it's just incredible to me that these Christian music or the musical generations, not just Christian music, but are so much quicker. I mean, that's 10, 15 years ago was all. So,
yeah.
Well, we definitely appreciate you hanging out with us here for a while, and I think I'm going to go listen to some old music now.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. I really appreciate it.
So I packed my bags for a better day. Watch the bands I know hit the roads and play. I was so carefree, and it still haunts me like growing pains. I miss the old days when we sit around and play, singing all the words to get away. I miss the old
Thanks for hanging out with us for this episode of the NRT Now podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And special thanks to Neon Feather for providing our theme music. Make sure to check out newreleasetoday.com and our socials for more great content. See you next episode.